Hello guys and welcome back. How many times have you heard that a good deck needs to have all original dual lands and fetch lands so its mana base is fine? As long as you are a millionaire, that is really easy to do. But for the rest of us whose budget is limited, we have to come up with something else. In this video I will show you how you can get an effective mana base without having to sell a kidney to do so. A brief disclaimer, this is only my opinion on what works best, so don't take it as a final word, and you can make any changes you like fitting your needs. Also, I will set our budget to $3 per card maximum. I didn't want to go too low and just have crappy lands, and of course I don't consider budget over $5, so I think $3 is a good spot to be. First, we have to cover the basics of every commander deck, land and non-land ratio. I like to run my decks with an approximate of 34 lands. I've heard that the recommended amount of lands is around 36 or 38, but with mana acceleration I find between 34 and 32 lands fine. 32 the lowest. I have played with even less lands, but it's not recommended, so if you can go over 34 for example, that's pretty good. But it really depends on how many accelerators you have and your average converted mana cost for the deck. The second important point to consider are the mana accelerators themselves, which I divide into three: ramp spells, mana rocks, and mana doublers. Some colors have a better chance to ramp than others, being in green the master of ramping, so you have to take that into account. However, mana rocks are available for all colors, so not playing green is not an excuse to not accelerate. And finally, before actually starting, you have to check your commander's color ratio and see which color predominates in order to create the base that you need. This budget mana base for commander will be divided into two. In this video we're going to talk about the mana base in lands, and in the next video we will talk about artifacts and ramp spells in general. Believe it or not, the lands almost always end up being the most expensive cards in the deck. Well, of course there are some ridiculous expensive cards that do not count, but in general they are usually most expensive if you want to have a very good mana base. However, it's not really necessary if you want to plan it in a budget. Lands can be divided into multicolor lands, that are lands that produce multiple colors, fetch lands, that are lands that search for other lands, utility lands, that are lands that can be used for other things besides generating mana, monocolor lands are the non-basic lands that add just one color, and finally the basic lands. For multicolor lands, we have 2-color lands, 3-color lands, and all-color lands. I find the all-color lands the most important for all commanders, except for monocolor commanders, as they generate mana of any color for anything in your hand or your commander. It doesn't matter if your deck is 2 colors or 5, having the necessary color at the right time decides who wins and who loses. Depending on your deck's colors, you will have better chances to get budget lands than other decks. First, we have the must-have land that must be in every deck, and it's Commander Tower. It enters untapped, it adds any color you need, and there is no better land in Commander than this. Then we have Grand Coliseum. It enters tapped, and for adding mana of any color it deals 1 damage to you, but it's worth it. I wouldn't recommend it for 2-color decks though. Exotic Orchard would usually add the color you need unless you are playing against a monocolor deck that is not your color. Again, I won't recommend this for 2-color decks. The Vivid Cycle is pretty useful for any deck. In a 2-color deck for example, it can add the other color with the counter and the color of the land without the counter. It's pretty good for budget and is really a good fix. Also with counters, Mirrodin Score is great. I'll keep Mirrodin Score only in 4 and 5 color decks, however, it's not really too fast. I highly suggest to avoid filters unless they add a benefit. Guildmage's Forum or Opal Palace are great examples of exceptions, as they can make your commander bigger. Another good one is Cascading Cataracts if you are running a 5 or 4 colors commander. There are some other 2-color filters that are actually really good, which we will see in each guild section. Try to avoid lands with a cost, such as Strangled Promenade on Rapture Spire or Gateway Plaza, but if you're running budget, they are pretty good for commander with 3 or more colors. When I play them, if I get the better lands, I replace them. They are not terribly bad, but they slow you down a little. Aether Hub is too conditional, and unless you proliferate or play with energy, I would avoid this one. On the other hand, Spine of Industry is pretty good if you have Artifact, which you will probably have, especially in Commander. Then we have some cards that help with some tribes, which gives them a little advantage to mana fix. Allies have Ally Camping, Dragons have Haven of the Spirit Dragon and Crucible of the Spirit Dragon. Elementals have Primal Beyond and Flame King Village. Slivers have Sliver Hive. Giant Tribals have Ancient Amphitheater. Goblins have Auntie's Hovel. And also, all tribals have Unclaimed Territory. Then we have the 3 color lands. I would suggest to have this always in your 3 and 4 color decks. In 5 color decks, I will either add them if I don't mind a little slow gameplay, or I would add just the ones that add the 2 or 3 more predominant colors of the deck. If your deck can have Murmuring Bosque, I would definitely add it because it can be fetched. Remember, that's a forest. The layer lands can be used, but they slow a little bit the game. These are also the first I replace if I need a change in my lands. For the 2 colors, I'll start with the ones that should be considered last in my opinion, and those are the ones that enter tapped, adding 2 colors and give you life. And to be honest, I consider them only because they give you life, otherwise I'll pass. These are the ones that have to be replaced first for something a little better like Shocklands. However, if you're playing a 2 color deck, I will replace a basic land instead of this one, as 2 color decks will need more fix, if that makes sense. And they are not that bad. I would totally and completely avoid all other lands that enter tap for 2 colors and do nothing else. There are a lot of them out there and they are just not worth it. Also avoid gates only you're playing with the Mason or maybe in a 2 color deck, but besides that I wouldn't recommend them. Bounce lands are fine and they're a little bit risky. If you play too many lands that enter the battlefield tapped, I would totally avoid them, but if not, I will consider them they are good, and if you can untap lands, that's even better. Then, if you play black, the Tainted Cycle is pretty good as long as you control a swamp. The Temples are really good if you want to scry, even if they slow the game a little bit. You'll notice that we are missing here 2 temples, but that's because they are over the budget limit. But if you want to extend your budget a little, I would definitely include them. Now let's start with the guilds. Here is where I found the most differences. Some guilds have their lands super expensive while others have super cheap. That's why you see some quantity differences between one and another. So let's start. First we have Azorius with Irrigated Farmland, Credit Stream, Nimbus Maze, Port Town, and Calciform Pools. Boros sadly only have Battlefield Forge. Dimir has Ferret Ponds, Sunken Hollow, Darkwater Catacomb, Dreadshift Reef, River of Tears, and Choke Statuary. Golgari only has Januar Oasis. Gruul has Shelter Ticket, Cinderglade, Fungal Riches, Game Trail, and Rootbone Crag. Iset is pretty expensive, and only Shivan Reef got to the budget mark. For Orzhov, only Caves of Koilos. Rakdos has Canyons Slough, Smoldering Marsh, Shadowblowed Ridge, Molten Slag Heap, and Forbidden Ruins. Silesia has Scattered Groves, Canopy Vista, Saltcrest Steep, Sungrass Prairie, Riftstone Portal, and Fortified Village. And finally, Simic has only Javi Maya Coast. A good tip, if you have the chance, especially if playing green, use the non-basic lands with the basic land subtype, so they can be fetched. So, then for monocolor decks, or lands that only add 1 color, first, for red we saw already in the tribal section Flamekin Village, which works for elementals, but it's really good utility if we want haste. Mono Black has Hookabok, which is a must-have. I already said it in some of my videos. It's a very good land to deal with graveyards. Then Crypt of Agadim if you play a lot of creatures or if your graveyard is relevant. And finally, Cabal Stronghold is really great if you play Mono Black deck. It's a budget version of Cabal Covers. It only counts basic swamps, but it's really good. For Mono Green we have Autumn Reef, the Basswood, which puts counters on green creatures that enter this turn, while Okina, Temple of the Grandfathers, give +1/+1 to a legendary creature, which can become handy. For Mono Blue, the only one in my opinion in the budget that is worth it is Haliomar Depths. Perfect to fix the top of your library and is almost a must. And finally for Mono White, what about the Scrying one with New Benalia? Then we have Artifact lands. I would only play them if artifacts are important for my deck, otherwise a basic land will do the same. Finally, some colorless lands you might want to consider. Shrine of the Forsaken Gods are 2 mana when you have 7 lands, while Temple of the False God adds 2 mana when you have 5 lands. Untamed Lake, the Cloud Keeper, adds 2 mana for legendary spells only, so great to cast your commander or some planeswalkers. Sulfuring Void if you want to scry one, and finally Mage Ring Network to store counters and then exchange them for mana. Then the Hathaway lands are really good, I play them a lot, I like them. The only one that is above the budget is the blue one, the rest are pretty good. If you think you need them in your deck because of your strategy, I would totally add them, they are pretty good. Then we go to the fetch lands. Fetch lands are really important lands, and that's something I really didn't understand when I started Magic. It not only helps you fixing your mana, but also reduces the number of lands in your deck, so later on in the game you won't be drawing too many lands. But we all know that fetch lands are really expensive, however, there are some really good fetch lands that are overlooked and budget friendly. First, all the panoramas. They search for a basic land that you need, normally 3 colors, but if you're playing for example a 2-color deck, you can add a panorama. Even monocolor decks are pretty good with this. I'll play the panoramas that search swamps for my Shirei deck to avoid drawing lands, but it's up to you. I really like the panoramas, they are pretty cheap, and besides they add mana by themselves, so if you want to consider them, I wouldn't say no to them. Then Terramorphic Expanse and Evolving Wilds for searching for basic lands too. Then we have the good budget fetch lands. They enter tapped and search for basic land types, not just basic ones. And finally, not exactly ramp or fetch, but Ashen Barrens help you fix your mana by cycling it. Then we have lands that ramp us, Blighted Fen, Cross and Verge, and Myriad Landscape. All search for 2 specific lands and put them onto the battlefield. And then we have Terrain Generator, which let us put a basic land from hand into play. Then we have Utility lands. Note that you don't need to add them in your deck, in fact in most cases you will not need them, but that really depends on your deck and if you think it's useful or not. It also depends on the meta you play with, but besides that, just consider them, and if you think they're worth it, just include them. If not, just let them pass and use basic land instead. So, we'll start with Mikokoro, which once was super expensive. I remember, I'm not really sure if I'm right with here, but I think it was like $18 the card, but now it's very budget, so it lets everyone draw. If you need it, you can add it. We have Alchemist Refuge, which let us cast stuff with flash. Desolate Lighthouse is one of those rares that if you open in an Ultimate Master booster, you cry. But the effect is pretty useful in some decks. It lets you draw a card then discard a card. The Slayer Stronghold gives +2/+0 and Vigilance to a creature and also gives haste, so aggro decks can really enjoy this. I played this in my Angel's Tribal, it's really good. Then we have Blighted Fen, which makes an open and sacrifice a creature. Novigen Heart of Progress puts a +1/+1 counter on each creature that entered the battlefield this turn. Mystifying Mace prevents damage from you by exiling an attacking creature and opponent's control and then return it to the battlefield at the end step. Rogue's Passage makes a creature unblockable. Forge of Heroes to get your commander with a +1/+1 counter or an extra loyalty if it's a planeswalker. Buried Ruin to return an artifact from graveyard to hand. Arcane Lighthouse to remove a Hexproof and Shroud. Throne of the High City to become the Monarch. Nivix, Area of the Firemind, let us exile top of our library, and if it's an instant or sorcery, you can cast it. Blighted Cataract to draw 2 cards. Prab, Spires of Order to prevent all damage from a source. Note that it does not target and effects last for a whole turn, shutting down Purphoros with a single land. Isn't that great? Also, as it doesn't target, it goes over Hexproof and Shroud. Rix Maadi, Dungeon Palace makes everyone discard at sorcery speed. Harry Rich Sanitarium makes everyone draw and discard. Nephalia Academy, in case your opponents want to discard your hand, you could discard it to the top of your deck instead. Sunhome, Fortress of the Legion, to give a creature double strike. Thespian Stage to copy a land, that's pretty useful, especially playing against other decks that have better lands, or if you need to copy another of your lands. It's really good. Nephalia Drownyard to mill 3. Inventor's Fair gives you a life and the upkeep if you control 2 artifacts, and you can sacrifice it to tutor an artifact and put it into your hand. Cathedral of War for Exalted. Detection Tower to remove Hexproof. Reliquary Tower for no maximum hand size. Bolt of the Archangel to make your creature have Death Touch and Lifelink. Tower of the Magistrate to give a creature protection from artifacts. Mirror Pool to copy a spell or creature by sacrificing it. Skark the Rage Pit to give +1/+1 and trample to a creature. And finally, Arc of Araska to draw a card if you have the City's Blessing. I want to include here also the land destruction lands. If you're playing against a deck with lands that add too much mana, such as Gaea's Cradle or Coffers, or some utility land is bothering you, like Maze of Feet, we need to be able to answer to that. Ghost Quarter only needs to be tapped for that, while Field of Ruin will replace itself on the destroy land and also helps each other player by letting them search for basic lands too. Basic lands should be considered last, but you should keep at least one of each type, especially for ramp spells and fetches. It's not a must though. And remember to check your color proportion to see which is the one that you have to have the most, so you can put the right amount of lands of each type. For monocolor decks, I would avoid every land that is not an utility land or a basic land, unless you're planning something weird. For example, it's not budget, but I play an Urborg in a mono white deck for some evil shenanigans. But yeah, in monocolor do not include any land that enters tap unless it adds more than 1 mana, or it has a really good effect, and even then consider if it's actually good or not. With this, your land base for a 5-color decks won't be over $75. I would say it will be even around $40 in maximum. Compared to having each shock land and probably fetches, that's super cheap. And not only we are aiming to a reasonable budget option, but this will make your deck pretty competitive too. Because sure, you can fill your deck with those 25-cent lands that enter Tampa do nothing, and just basic lands, but you will have a hard time against decks with not budget restrictions. And even budget monocolor decks would be a hard match against a deck that everything enters tapped. But yeah, this will be it for this video. Next time we will talk about mana rocks and probably ramp spells, mana doublers and everything. If the video doesn't go too long, I think this one went way too long. The script has 5 pages, imagine this in very small letter, and this is what I'm reading. But yeah, I hope the next one is a little shorter. After that we will continue with the second season of the 99, so stay tuned. Click the bell to get notified for when I upload the next video. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do so, that will help me a lot. Also, if you like the video, don't forget to click the button and share with your friends. What do you think about the lands? How do you manage your budget? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching and see you in the next one.